Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to BioPharm's second webinar and hopefully a regular series of webinars on CTMS. Our first webinar, the benefits of Siebel Clinical integration, we did back in December. We presented on various integration methodologies and approaches to integrating CTMS, and we also did a live demonstration of an integration between Siebel Clinical and Oracle Clinical, the CTMS solution. And in case you missed that webinar or you would like to watch it again, the recorded presentation is available for download on our website at www.biopharm.com. And today we're going to be discussing Siebel Clinical implementation options for small and medium-sized organizations. Let me start out by introducing myself. My name is Param Singh, and I am the Vice President of the Clinical Trial Management Solution Practice here at BioPharm Systems. I've been working in the industry since '99 and have almost exclusively been working with Siebel Clinical during that time. Before joining BioPharm 3 years ago, I was part of Accenture's pharma R&D practice and leading Siebel Clinical implementations there as well. Overall, I've been a part of, I believe now 15 implementations of Siebel Clinical. I've worked with a variety of organizations to implement these solutions, from large and mid-sized pharmaceutical companies, contract research organizations, medical device companies, and academic institutions. Here's a look at today's agenda. We're going to start with a brief overview on Siebel Clinical, which is Oracle's CTMS product. This will just be a high-level overview. Next, since the topic today is around bringing Siebel Clinical to smaller organizations, we will discuss the concept of software accelerators and their benefits. We're going to discuss how Oracle has encouraged their partners to develop these accelerator solutions to help companies take advantage of their robust applications. We will then discuss a brief overview of BioPharm's Siebel Clinical Accelerator, Ascend. Unfortunately, we don't have time for a live demo today, but you can certainly schedule detailed demos of these applications with us later for your organization. So next, we'll hopefully shed some light on the topic of cloud computing. This has now become a common term in the industry, and we want to spend some time understanding the concept, and then we'll look at how and where this concept applies to our industry. And then we're going to look at how the cloud concept inspired BioPharm to develop our latest offering, which is Ascend On Demand, and then we'll have some time for questions. Before we get started, I did want to point out a few features of the platform we're using. Right now, we have everyone else on mute, and if you do have an issue, please click on the raise hand button and we'll pause. Also, for the Q&A portion, to unmute your line, you just press *7 on your phone, and then you press *6 on your phone to mute again. I'd also like to remind everyone that we're recording today's presentation, and we're going to post it on our website afterwards. Okay, so let's get started. So a clinical trial management system, or CTMS, is a technology solution designed to help pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device, and CRO organizations manage all aspects of their clinical trials efficiently and effectively, and thereby reduce time and cost throughout the clinical trial process. It essentially tracks the metadata of the trial itself to effectively track the study and related activities, payments, contacts, etc. Siebel Clinical is a robust CTMS solution that serves as a central repository of clinical trial management information. It provides greater visibility into real-time site and study statistics, which can enable companies to make better decisions during their clinical trials. Siebel Clinical helps manage each step of the clinical trial process, from site selection to site and study closeout. Siebel Clinical is now clearly the leader in this space, with the most user base in the industry than any other system. It's highly configurable, So organizations of different types with different business processes can implement Siebel by configuring and enabling their SOPs and business processes in the system. While Siebel Clinical is clearly the leader with respect to user base of CTMS, up until very recently, it has only been the larger organizations who have implemented Siebel Clinical. Since it's highly configurable, only companies with sufficient capital could afford the initial investment to do a custom implementation of Siebel Clinical. And it is for that reason that over the last few years, we've seen a few accelerators emerge for Siebel Clinical and other configured applications. Accelerators are pre-configured, pre-packaged versions of a configured software system. They allow for significant reduction in time and effort for implementation, and which provides substantial financial savings for organizations. Typically, accelerators will include some commonly requested functionality and configurations, so the organization doesn't have to spend the time and money on those specific enhancements. So the key challenge is, since each of these accelerators potentially include different functionality, is really to find the one that provides relevant and beneficial configurations and enhancements for your organization. In the case of Siebel Clinical, there really is no typical custom implementation. I've seen them range from anywhere from 6 months to 2+ years, with a variety of organizations, and it really depends on the client's application and integration requirements. But on average, I'd say a phase 1 implementation project can last from 9 to 12 months, and implementations for these size projects can run up to $1 million or more just in implementation services. While some of the early adopters of Siebel Clinical have spent millions on implementation since they were interested in a very, very custom implementation of their solution, that, of course, is a very significant investment for a smaller company. This is where Oracle decided to partner up with implementation service organizations like BioPharm and encourage BioPharm to create accelerators that would address desired functionality in Siebel Clinical quicker than the release cycle of a Siebel Clinical-based product. So based on several years of experience and several custom implementations of Siebel Clinical, BioPharm created our Siebel Clinical Accelerator Ascend, which has been reviewed and approved by Oracle Expert Services through a full configuration and code review to ensure that we follow Siebel best practices when developing this accelerator solution. So I spoke a little bit about the impetus about creating accelerators, and for Ascend, when we implemented Siebel Clinical for large custom implementations, we noticed that each organization was really asking for some of the same enhancements. There were specific requirements around site monitoring, trip reports, supplies tracking, expenses, and payments that each organization was asking for that were quite similar. So we took a look at these high priority and the most frequently requested functionality and pre-built those in our accelerator. We also reached out to some current and potential clients as well to determine what desired functionality was missing from the base Siebel product. Once we released Ascend, this immediately allowed smaller, mid-sized organizations to take advantage of the power of Siebel Clinical, but without the high implementation price tag. So immediately, we saw smaller companies looking to take advantage of this solution. In addition to the obvious advantage that it gives, smaller and mid-sized clients, even larger organizations saw accelerators as launching pads for their own large custom implementation. So instead of starting with Siebel Clinical Vanilla, which is the base product, out of the box, accelerators allowed them to start their custom implementations from a springboard solution, which decreased their overall spend on their customizations. So while Accelerators, without a doubt, brought Siebel Clinical to a more wider client base of companies, Accelerators still had an initial hardware and software license investment that can leave them out of reach for organizations with just a handful of users. When I was at DIA last year, I met a gentleman who ran a small CRO in Europe that had about a dozen employees. They were offering CRO services to small companies in Europe, and they were doing this with the tools they had available, such as Excel spreadsheets, a free document management solution, and other tools on their limited intranet. He was interested in taking advantage of a CTMS like Siebel Clinical, and knew and understood how a tool like this could give his company a competitive edge. But being a small company like that, they didn't have the capital nor the infrastructure in place to do a custom or even an accelerator implementation. It was just too costly and too high risk for them. And so, inspired by stories like that and others similar to that, we decided to look to the next level of offerings to further provide even more affordable software solutions. And the answer was on-demand services, or software as a service, or cloud computing. So cloud computing is internet-based computing, where shared servers provide resources, software, and data to computers and other devices on demand. It describes a new delivery model for IT services based on the internet, and it typically involves over-the-internet provision of dynamically scalable and often virtualized resources. On-demand services like Salesforce.com, Siebel CRM on Demand, and even Google services are examples of cloud computing, which are basically based on the premise that consumers no longer need to control the infrastructure that supports them. They simply need access to the solutions and applications to support their business. So for applications such as Siebel, cloud sounds a lot like hosting, but it's slightly different. And here are the various options for hosting of enterprise applications for organizations. Dedicated hosting is where you own the hardware. So you own the physical hardware, the servers, and the software application. You own the licenses for the software that you're implementing or using. And the data center is basically just housing and maintaining those servers. So at any time, you still have the ability to bring that hardware and software in-house in an on-premises setup. So that's the only difference. Shared hosting is where you own the software application, but you're essentially leasing the hardware which your software is on, and the data center is maintaining it. So if an organization wants to bring that application in a shared hosting environment, if they want to bring that in-house and on-premises, they would just have to make a hardware purchase and bring that application in, the application that they own in-house. On-demand or cloud computing assumes that the organization doesn't own anything, doesn't own the hardware nor the software, and is essentially leasing the services to be able to use the application on demand. So as their user base or demands increase, they just increase their subscription accordingly. They don't incur costs for hardware maintenance or replacements, and they don't own anything in this scenario. So they're just using software as a service. Here is a fairly common example that further explains cloud computing. It essentially functions like a utility, like electricity. The power grid stores electricity, which is available to all subscribers at all times. When the demand for electricity increases, such as during the workday, more sections of the power grid are engaged to supply power. And when demand decreases, such as in the middle of the night, fewer sections of the grid are engaged. So essentially, a user is only paying for the delivery of the amount of power they use and doesn't pay for the hardware that supports that delivery. So if they stop using that service, they stop paying for it, and they don't have any other liability or risk. So the benefits of cloud computing in the life sciences or any industry are sophisticated software is accessible to organizations of all sizes. So no longer do organizations have to actually purchase off-the-shelf software solutions outright or develop custom in-house solutions to be able to implement them in-house. This translates to significant reduction in project implementation costs for these applications, and also infrastructure hardware costs and support and maintenance costs for these applications are also reduced significantly since they're no longer housed internally. So there's clearly a significant reduction in overall costs, but in true cloud computing, when working with regulated and sensitive data, there are security concerns now, since the data is now housed outside of a locally controlled network. However, these concerns can be mitigated by performing due diligence when selecting a provider. It's the provider's responsibility to ensure that the infrastructure is secure and that their clients' data and applications are protected. This can be done in a variety of ways, from individualized instances, advanced virtualization, data security protocols, and the use of third-party tools. And it's the customer's responsibility to ensure that the provider has taken the proper security measures to protect their information. And here's how. As with any software vendor, we recommend performing a thorough audit. If you aren't able to perform one in person due to resource constraints, you can request an audit report, ideally from a third-party audit. In your audit, you focus on physical and electronic security measures such as how they control access to the facilities or user access to the systems. Also, there are backup and recovery plans to ensure that your data is going to be safe in the event of unforeseen issues, and make sure you have access to the data no matter what. For example, if the provider were to be acquired by another company. Additionally, for cloud vendors and data centers, we recommend that you request encryption schemes and proof that they were tested by professionals. So this is really just to confirm that your data will remain confidential and segregated from other companies' data. Also, you can request that the location, you can request where your data will be housed be specified in your contract. This can be challenging with cloud computing and global organizations, but you can request a specific country or territory. The more you can narrow it down, the better, in case you ever need to investigate the history of your data. But rest assured that even though this talk about cloud computing is fairly new, internet-based companies have invested quite a bit already to ensure that these methods of data security are thorough. And many large companies have already shown their faith in cloud computing and have started to adopt the cloud for more and more aspects of their business. For example, here we see Eli Lilly is now using cloud computing services to support their scientists with on-demand processing power and storage, and they have plans to expand their use of cloud-based services. While Eli Lilly is forging ahead into the cloud, the rest of us might not be quite ready to follow suit due to the significant amounts of sensitive data housed in our clinical systems. But a good starting point could be your CTMS. Since this system is really the metadata around your trial and doesn't house actual clinical or source data, this is where we expect companies might start using on-demand solutions for their clinical systems. And that's why we at BioPharm have decided to merge our Siebel Clinical Accelerator offerings with the concept of cloud computing to create Ascend On Demand. So Ascend On Demand is inspired by cloud computing. And what I mean by that is it still offers the same benefits of the cloud, such as a low one-time setup, accelerated go live, sometimes within a few days, and a low recurring monthly subscription instead of an outright purchase. So you can enjoy all the cost and time savings benefits of cloud services, but it's not a true cloud service like Google or Salesforce, where the data for all the users is housed on the same cluster of servers. Our solution actually addresses the data concerns that we mentioned earlier of a true cloud computing and retains the security of your data because we give you your own instance of the application through virtualization. This means that with our on-demand solution, your data security remains intact. In addition, you're not just getting a base version of the application to configure and customize. You get a robust enhanced product with our Ascend Accelerator configurations as well. Even though it's a cloud solution, you still get access to all the typical documentation and services you would as if it were an on-premise solution, such as training documentation and delivery, and even procedural documentation such as SOPs, work instructions, and even ready-to-execute UAT test scripts. Because we provide organizations with their own instance of the application, they still have the option to make customizations and even integrate with other systems. So even though you're outsourcing using this cloud service, you still have the ability to customize your application based on your requirements and even integrate with your in-house systems. So we believe that hybrid cloud solution offers the best of both worlds, time and cost savings without compromising flexibility or security. So in summary, while with Siebel Clinical, there are now several different implementation options that are available to our organizations instead of the only one that was available just a few years ago, which was a custom implementation. While a custom implementation is still an available option and some organizations do choose to go down that route, it is the option that comes with the largest initial investment in hardware, software, and implementation services. It also comes with the highest risk that even after all this investment, if user adoption does become an issue, the entire investment is lost. And I've seen organizations implement solutions and never use them and just put them on a shelf, and that could be really high risk there. The Accelerator in-house option for implementation, this is, of course, a lower initial investment. Although hardware and software licenses are still the same, the implementation services is where the savings, the time and cost savings come into play with this option. And it gives you much more functionality and resources than a standard base application. Accelerator dedicated hosting option is virtually the same initial investment as the in-house Accelerator option, but with this option, the hosting fees for hosting the application essentially replace your IT, hardware and software maintenance costs and still allow for control over your solution and the flexibility to be able to bring it back in-house if desired. The Accelerator shared hosting goes one step further and saves hardware costs for your company. So this is true for the initial implementation as well as when servers eventually need replacing and maintenance. So that replacement and maintenance cost is a responsibility of the provider. So you're never having to, every 5 years or 10 years, replace out hardware. That cost is passed on to the provider, and so there's cost savings there. Also, there's still some flexibility with your solution in a shared hosting environment. So if you want to bring that solution in-house for any reason, you're able to do that with just a simple in-house hardware allocation. And of course, the Accelerator on-demand solution gives you all the capability and benefits of the Accelerator solution with little or no initial investment, making it very affordable to organizations with only a handful of users. So you can continue to pay for the use of the solution for as long as you use it. It's the lowest risk option because it involves the smallest upfront investment, and if user adoption does become an issue, or you determine that another solution fits better with your organization, you can stop using the service with little or no financial impact. So with that, I'd like to open up the lines for any questions you may have. And just to remind you, if you do have a question, just click on the raise hand button, and we'll try to answer the questions as we get them. And to unmute your line, just press *7 on your phone, and then to mute your phone again, just press *6. And it's also up to you how you want to introduce yourself. Just as a reminder, this presentation is being recorded and is going to be posted on our website. And you can also ask your questions via chat as well if you choose to. All right, I think we have a couple questions. Jean-Marin, if you can unmute your phone and ask your question.
Hello, this is Jean Morin. I work for Accelerators Pharma. My question is, on the last slide that you presented, you defined multiple options. Do you have sort of baselines as what are the breakpoints as far as number of users or level of complexity that you would select one over the other?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think there's probably some good discussion that needs to happen with each organization to determine that. Certainly, what we've seen in the industry, these new accelerator and on-demand services are fairly new, so there's not too many organizations that are on those at the moment. But certainly for the custom implementations or the accelerator in-house solutions are typically done by organizations that have are already an IT infrastructure in place. So it really there's several factors that come into that. Number of users obviously come into that, but infrastructure requirements, and if they have an IT department that's able to maintain and support their applications, then they'll typically want an in-house solution for that. But if they're wanting to save money on infrastructure, if they don't have an infrastructure in place that can support an application like that, or resources that can support an application like that, they'll opt for hosting type of scenarios. And it really depends on some of the desires of the organization, whether they want to be able to own the software licenses for the applications that they want to be able to run, or does it open the door up for just services? So software as a service, you're basically leasing the application or renting the application versus owning it. So there's different factors that need to go into those discussions, but I think the organization really has to weigh those factors and weigh the risk and really try to hone in on which actual option is best for them. But the good thing is now we do have more options, right? So a few years ago, the only option was to buy licenses and buy hardware and do an implementation in-house. And so now the door's open to a wider variety of options for implementation, and it just warrants a discussion on the various pros and cons of each of those solutions. But you can certainly imagine that smaller organizations that want to take advantage of a solution like Siebel Clinical and don't have the capital would certainly fall into that category of hosting or on-demand services.
Yeah, I agree. This is a very good model.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? Okay, so I got a question via chat. For the Accelerator on-demand option, if we choose to stop using the service at some point, what would happen to our data? It's a great question. So with any of the Accelerator hosting solutions or on-demand solutions, if you decide to stop the service at some point, one of the things that you should take into account when doing negotiations with your provider is to protect your data. So something in the contracts and the agreement should reflect what happens to that data. On our side, what we do is, the data is owned by the customer. So from an on-demand solution, if a customer is choosing to opt out of our on-demand solution, then the data that's in our environment is owned by the client. So we would provide that data to the customer. So the database itself could be given to the customer. And also, if there's a new system that they're opting to go to, we could provide additional services like data migration services to actually put the data in a certain format to be able to work and import into their new solution. So there's, when working with providers for these types of solutions, take into account that the data needs to be protected, but you should be able to, the client and customer should be able to request that data at any time. There's another question. How is cloud computing different from load balancing? That's a good question. So cloud computing, outside of the context of Siebel Clinical, it essentially it is like load balancing because your users that are using your services in a true cloud computing environment, as demand increases, essentially your cluster of servers is doing a load balance, across the solution set. So it's really not different from load balancing. The only difference is that it's not one system, per sort of user of the or a client that's using the system. So typically an in-house solution would have its own load balancing, whereas for a cloud solution, if you have a variety of solutions and a variety of clients that are using those solutions, it's load balancing on that entire cluster of servers that's supporting the applications. Here's another question that we have is, do you customize your Accelerator based on custom requirements? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. So with each and every one of the Accelerator options, the benefit of using an Accelerator is you still have the ability to customize it. So you can implement it as is, out of the box. But since it's Siebel and it's highly configurable, each customer and client has the ability to further customize it and configure it according to their specific requirements. So if you have requirements on different terminology or different things that you want to track, additional fields, even just the look and feel of the application, we're able to customize and configure the Accelerator specific to your organization. And that's true for obviously an in-house solution, but also for dedicated and shared hosting, as well as your Accelerator on demand or Ascend on demand solution. Since we're really doing a unique, individualized instance of even the on-demand services that we're offering, you're able to customize and configure your company's application because it is segregated from every other company that may be using that service. So not only is your data segregated and secure, but the actual configuration of your specific application or on-demand application is also segregated. So you have the ability to have a very unique experience with your Accelerator solution. And I have another question here. Small to medium-sized companies can also use outsourced business models where the majority of the clinical trial activities are conducted and managed by CROs. The CROs use their CTMS and provide reports, Excel spreadsheets to the sponsors, which are very difficult to use. Do you have any experience or examples where Ascend is integrated with CRO CTMS applications and automatically exchange data? Great question. So actually one of our clients that did implement Ascend, they did an Ascend in-house implementation. In addition to Ascend, they did a considerable amount of configuration on top of it just because of their unique business process and unique requirements on tracking data. Also, they worked with they currently work with 3 preferred CRO providers that they are using more and more in an outsourced capacity. And so they integrated, or they built integration where their in-house CTMS solution, the Ascend in-house, was to be integrated directly with these 3 CRO solutions. And so what we did there was, rather than doing a point-to-point interface between the customer's Ascend solution and the each CRO's CTMS solution, and by the way, each CRO was actually using a different CTMS application. So rather than doing point-to-point interfaces, what we did is we built an interface, an integration platform which expected a XML feed in a specific format from the CROs, and that would be imported directly into our Ascend application, or the customer's Ascend application. And so what we did was we published this XML structure and worked with the CROs for them to be able to provide incremental loads from their specific CTMS solutions into this prescribed XML format to be able to import it on a regular basis in a batch scenario into our customer's Ascend CTMS solution. So yes, the answer is yes, you can actually do that, and we're working with a few of the large CROs right now to leverage what we've done for this client and actually provide sort of an accelerator service for integrations with CROs, because as we see more and more companies in the industry are actually leaning towards an outsourced model. So being able to provide sort of a CRO integration out of the box is something that we're looking into and working with our these CRO organizations to be able to provide that with our Accelerator solution. Here we have another question. With the Accelerator cloud solution, is the maintenance and customization of the application limited to BioPharm personnel, or can others be granted rights to perform maintenance and customization? So with the Accelerator in-house and dedicated and shared hosting models, you actually, since you actually own the application, you own the configuration. In those 3 scenarios, you do have the ability to have access to the configurations and actually perform customizations and configurations and on your own specific instance of Ascend. Whereas the Accelerator on demand, since you're leasing that service, the way that we have structured it is that any enhancements, any additional configurations, additional fields or additional views and screens and things like that would be through BioPharm. So BioPharm would manipulate the code or do the configuration in Siebel tools to meet your requirement. So that's the only caveat with the on-demand solution, is since you don't own the configuration and the code, the IP, basically, to protect the IP, we would perform those configurations as a service. but other configurations such as administration service, like user creation, role-based changes, or list of values changes throughout the application, and any other sort of administrative feature that controls some of the those system administration functions of the application. Those can be taken on by the client in any of those scenarios, so including the on-demand scenario. So with the Accelerator on-demand scenario, we would create a system administration user type that would have that ability to make those system administrative changes to your application, and you would have that option with your own personnel. I have another question here. Which option would be recommended if data will be used in a business intelligence environment? Any sort of in-house solution would work with that. Of course, when we get into hosting, either dedicated, shared, or on demand, you still have capability of doing that. We still have capability of doing, like I mentioned, integration between the CTMS application that's being hosted and your other applications that are in-house, for example. Technically, it becomes a little bit more complex when we're dealing with integrations, because we just have to open up dedicated VPNs or some sort of network, secure network path for the applications to talk to each other. So whether it's a business intelligence environment, or integrating with a clinical data management system, or a document management system, any one of those scenarios, we have to just on both ends, on BioPharm's end as well as the customer end, make sure that we open up those ports and private networks to be able to allow for that integration, and even if the data is being used in a business intelligence environment, that would still need to be taken care of through that network setup. I'm looking through the chat just to see if there's any other questions. And if you do have a question, please feel free to do it in that chat window, and I'll be able to see that question so I can address it. Okay. There's a question about what EDC platforms have you integrated with? So most recently, we've actually just finished an integration between Siebel CTMS and Oracle's clinical data management and electronic data capture system, Oracle Clinical and remote data capture. So we've done a full sort of robust integration between the two, and coincidentally, that was the topic of our last month's webinar. So if you're interested in knowing more about that specific integration, go to our website and look at the webinar section from last month. It's Siebel Clinical integration. But in addition to that platform, we've actually integrated to, like I said, we don't like to do point-to-point interfaces. And so for one of our clients that was using an ADC platform and several IVRS vendors, that they were getting the same information. So subject and subject visit and activity data was coming in through, I think 1 or 2 EDC systems as well as a few IVRS systems. We built one input for that information. So we built an interface platform that is going to accept messages from these variety of systems in a certain format. So we're expecting data for subject data, visit data, and activity data, and it was all going through the same input mechanism and importing it into the CTMS. And the benefit of that was that the client then had the flexibility to be able to change IVRS vendors or EDC vendors at any point, and still not impact the interface. Another question is about safety systems, integrating with safety systems. We're actually doing a safety system integration right now with Argus Safety. So it's an Ascend in-house implementation, and they're also doing an Argus Safety implementation, and we are now integrating the two systems together. And it's actually pretty innovative, where the client wanted the ability to utilize some sort of platform to do initial call intake for their product issues and safety cases. And Argus Safety doesn't really have a dynamic call intake mechanism, sort of like a call center where, based on the answer of the previous question, the system asks the next relevant question. So it actually guides the customer service rep through the call. But Siebel actually has that feature, and it's called Smart Scripts. So what we did was, since they already had CTMS in-house, and Siebel CRM base comes with the module called Smart Scripts, so we just leveraged this additional module called Smart Scripts and built out their call intake process within Siebel. And then once they're finished with that call intake, we mapped out all of those fields that they used in their call script and mapped it to Argus's E2B gateway. So Argus has an already out-of-the-box E2B gateway, which is a prescribed XML format that it can use to import cases. So we leveraged that, and we generated an XML file from Siebel Smart Scripts, and then it's integrating with Argus Safety and importing that case information. And then the users would then go into Argus Safety and do their further safety investigation in Argus. But it allowed us to take advantage of the systems that the customer had in-house, rather than building out a custom solution to be able to do that, or configuring Argus for overextending the Argus system. We actually leveraged something that they already owned, and that saved them money, and we built out this functionality that met their requirements. Here's the question. You've mentioned using XML files. Would web services and web calls also be an option for integration? Yes, and we actually use web services in conjunction with the XML files that are generated. So utilizing the various tools that Siebel has and some of the newer technologies that are included in the newer versions of these applications, we're able to use web services and web calls and messages in XML to be able to integrate systems, integrate two systems. And also with XML, since the the hierarchy and everything is already taken care of, the relationships between the different data types that are in that message are already taken care of. It's definitely a better way to do it than, say, flat files that we were using sort of years ago. So this is definitely a lot more cleaner, and it retains the data integrity pretty well. Someone asked if there's a demo link of Siebel that is hosted that I can explore. So I know that you can request a demo from us, from BioPharm. We'd be happy to provide a detailed demo to your organization. And actually, we can, rather than sort of a playback that's available on the internet, this will allow it to be a little bit more tailored to your needs. So you can certainly request a demo on our website. There's a link to request a demo, on our website, and we'd be happy to either demo our Accelerator or Siebel Clinical, or even integrations, whatever you're interested in. So we can definitely do that and tailor it to what you're interested in. So I think we're almost out of time here, and I think I've answered all the questions that we've gotten, and I just want to close out the webinar. But if you do have any other questions, feel free to email me directly, for either demos or if you want to explore, the different implementation options and, start having a discussion on, what would be relevant to your organization. So I want to thank you all for sharing the past hour or so with us, and I hope you found it was time well spent. We do have additional webinars planned for February, April, and May, and those details will be coming soon, so I encourage you to take advantage of that. We're also taking March off from webinars due to the CBI CTMS conference in Philadelphia. That's the last week of March, I think Tuesday and Wednesday in last week of March. And so we encourage you all to attend that conference as well. We're actually going to be co-presenting a workshop on, it's going to be a 3-hour workshop on CTMS training programs with one of our clients, and just exploring the different training approaches and what works well with training for Siebel CTMS. As a reminder, today's presentation is going to be available for download from our website within 24 hours. If you do have any additional questions about which implementation options might be the best for you and your organization, or to schedule a demo for any of our offerings, feel free to contact me directly, and my email address is here on the screen. And I want to thank you all again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.